This story is titled, Parents Skipped My Wedding to Attend My Entitled Sister-in-Law Birthday, and I Broke Down in Tears at the Aisle. Hey everyone! We spend so much time finding you the best content. If you're enjoying these stories and want to support the channel, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. It really helps our channel. Now let's start the video. OP starts by saying, this story is titled, Parents Skipped My Wedding to Attend My Entitled Sister-in-Law Birthday, I Broke Down in Tears at the Aisle. Hey everyone! If you're enjoying these stories and want to support the channel, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. It really helps our channel. Now let's start the video. OP starts by saying, hey Reddit, I never thought I'd be the type of person to share my personal life on here, but I'm at a breaking point and I need to get this off my chest. I'm 22 female, and I recently got married to the most wonderful man, Ben 26 male. But what should have been the happiest day of my life turned into something I'll never forget for all the wrong reasons. Before I dive into the wedding, let me start with some context about my family and why my relationship with my parents has always been complicated. My parents have always been a little too obsessed with my sister-in-law, Lauren. She's 29 and married to my older brother, Adam. She came into our family about 5 years ago, and honestly, at first, I thought she was great. Lauren has one of those personalities that just draws people in. She's confident, outgoing, and has this way of making everything about her. At family gatherings, she's always the loudest in the room, and somehow every conversation seems to circle back to her life. My parents absolutely adore her. I don't mean they like her. They treat her like she's the greatest thing to ever happen to our family. Meanwhile, I've always been the quieter, more independent one. I'm not saying I'm perfect, but I've never been the type to demand attention or make a fuss over things. My parents always told me they appreciated how self-sufficient I was, but over time I realized that was just code for, we're going to ignore you because you don't complain. Lauren, on the other hand, is the opposite of me. She loves the spotlight and has no problem asking for and getting everything she wants. And my parents? They give it to her. Every single time. They saw her as the angel of the house. For example, a couple of years ago, I was saving up to buy my first car. I worked 2 part-time jobs while going to college full-time and was super proud of myself for scraping together enough for a used car. I told my parents about it, thinking they'd be happy for me, but all they said was, that's great, sweetie. Did you hear Lauren is looking at brand new SUVs? When Lauren got her fancy new car, with some financial help from my parents, of course, they acted like she'd just won a gold medal. It's been like this for years. Every time I accomplish something, it's a footnote in their world compared to whatever Lauren's doing. She throws these over-the-top birthday parties every year, and my parents treat them like national holidays. They help her plan, spend weeks picking out the perfect gifts, and gush about her decorations like she invented party planning. When it's my birthday, a card, maybe dinner if they remember. Despite all this, I kept telling myself that my wedding would be different. I thought, this is my big day. They'll finally put me first. My fiancé and I planned a small but beautiful ceremony. Nothing extravagant, but it was important to me that my family was there. I even picked a date that wouldn't conflict with anything else, because I knew how easily my parents get distracted. But as the months went on, I noticed a familiar pattern. Lauren's birthday was just a week before my wedding, and my parents started getting more excited about her party than my ceremony. They'd ask me questions about the wedding here and there, but it was always an afterthought. Conversations with them would go something like this. Me. I finalized the seating chart for the wedding. Mom. That's nice, sweetie. Did you know Lauren's having a photo booth at her party? Isn't that so creative? It was frustrating, but I kept convincing myself. I thought, it's just a birthday party. They'll still be there for my wedding. I should have known better. About a week before the wedding, my parents sat me down for what they called a quick chat. I figured it was going to be about last-minute plans or something, so I wasn't prepared for what they actually said. My mom, avoiding eye contact, started with, sweetheart, we've been meaning to talk to you about something. That's when my dad jumped in. We might not be able to make it to your wedding. I swear my heart stopped for a second. What do you mean you might not make it? It's my wedding. You've known about this for months. My mom sighed like this was hard for her. Lauren really needs us to help with her birthday party. She's been so stressed, and we promised we'd be there to set up and keep things running smoothly. I just stared at them, trying to process what I was hearing. So, you're telling me you're skipping my wedding? For a birthday party? It's not like that, my dad said, trying to sound reasonable. You've always been so independent. We figured you'd understand. Lauren's been planning this party for months, and she's counting on us. I've been planning my wedding for months, I shot back. This isn't just any day. It's one of the most important days of my life. My mom gave me this apologetic smile that made my blood boil. We'll try to make it to the reception, sweetie, but you know how much Lauren needs us. That was it. They had made their decision, and no amount of arguing was going to change their minds. I left the conversation feeling invisible, like my wedding didn't even matter to them. The days leading up to the wedding were a blur of last-minute details, and trying to keep myself from completely falling apart. I didn't tell many people about what my parents had said because, honestly, I was embarrassed. How do you explain to someone that your own parents chose a birthday party over your wedding? I kept hoping they'd change their minds. Maybe they'd realize how ridiculous they were being and show up at the last minute. I told myself, they're my parents. They'll come. However, they didn't. The days leading up to my wedding were supposed to be filled with excitement and anticipation. Instead, I spent most of that week in a fog of frustration and disappointment. I kept replaying the conversation with my parents in my head, hoping I'd somehow misunderstood them or that they'd come to their senses. But every time I thought about it, their words were clear. Lauren's party comes first. I tried to focus on the positives. My fiancé, now husband, Ben, was incredible throughout the whole ordeal. He kept reminding me that this day was about us, and that we should focus on celebrating our love, not my parents' absence. My friends were also amazing, helping with last-minute preparations and trying to keep my spirits up. But deep down, I couldn't shake the hurt. The worst part was that my parents didn't even seem conflicted about their decision. I would have understood if they had struggled with it or shown any sign of guilt, but they acted like it was no big deal. My mom texted me the day before the wedding, casually asking if I'd need help with anything at the reception, in case we can swing by after Lauren's party. Swing by? Like my wedding was a casual dinner they might drop in on if they had time? Didn't even respond. Then there was Lauren. She was, of course, thrilled about her birthday party. She hosted these over-the-top events every year, but this one seemed especially elaborate. There were custom decorations, a live band, and even a food truck she'd rented. My parents were fully involved, helping her with setup and talking about it like it was the event of the year. She didn't say anything directly to me about my wedding, which was worse in some ways. It was like she didn't even care enough to acknowledge that her party was causing problems. The night before the wedding, I had a small rehearsal dinner with Ben and some close friends and family. My parents weren't there, of course. They were busy helping Lauren decorate. I tried not to let it get to me, but seeing other couples with their parents, laughing and sharing stories, was like a punch to the gut. Ben's parents were incredibly sweet and made an effort to include me, but it wasn't the same. I wanted my mom and dad to be there, to share in this moment with me, but they weren't, and I started to wonder if they ever really would be. The morning of the wedding, I woke up early, hoping to feel some of that bridal excitement everyone talks about. Instead, I felt a knot in my stomach. I checked my phone, half expecting to see a message from my parents saying they'd changed their minds and were on their way. But there was nothing. Not a single text or call. Just silence. When I got to the venue, my bridesmaids did their best to keep me distracted while we got ready. I tried to focus on the little things, my hair, my dress, the flowers, but it was hard not to notice the empty chairs at the front of the ceremony space where my parents were supposed to sit. I kept telling myself, this is your day. Don't let them ruin it. But the hurt was always there, just under the surface. As guests started arriving, I kept glancing toward the entrance, hoping to see my parents walk through the door. I imagined my mom, dressed to the nines, smiling as she came to give me a hug, and my dad, teasing me about not tripping down the aisle. But it never happened. Instead, I saw photos on social media of them at Lauren's party. My mom was grinning in a picture next to some balloon arch, and my dad looked like he was having the time of his life holding a cupcake with Lauren's face on it. I felt like someone had stabbed me in my heart. The ceremony itself was beautiful, or at least that's what everyone told me. I wish I could say I fully enjoyed it, but I was so distracted by my parents' absence that it was hard to focus. When I walked down the aisle, I kept my eyes on Ben, trying not to think about the empty chairs. I smiled for the photos, said my vows, and tried to act like everything was fine. But inside, I was breaking. When we reached the reception, I decided to check my phone again, hoping for some sort of message from my parents. Maybe they'd feel bad and decide to come late. But instead, I saw my mom had posted a photo with the caption, "Helping Lauren pull off the best party ever. So proud of her." I wanted to scream. Throughout the reception, people kept asking about my parents. Where are they? Are they okay? I didn't know how to answer without sounding like a bitter bride, so I just said, "Oh, something came up." But inside, I was furious. I couldn't believe they were making me lie for them on my day. Toward the end of the night, I finally broke down. Ben found me sitting in a corner, trying to hold back tears. He sat next to me, wrapped an arm around my shoulders, and just let me cry. "They don't deserve this space in your head," he said softly. "You have so many people here who love you. Let's focus on them." He was right, of course, but it didn't make it hurt any less. By the time the night ended, I felt like I had been through a battle. I was exhausted, emotionally drained, and still trying to make sense of everything. My parents' choice to prioritize Lauren's party over my wedding wasn't just a one-time mistake, it was a reflection of years of favoritism and neglect. And for the first time, I started to wonder if my relationship with them would ever recover. As Ben and I drove off at the end of the night, I stared out the window, trying to process everything. My wedding day was over, and while it had been beautiful in many ways, it wasn't the day I had dreamed of. My parents' absence hung over everything like a dark cloud, and I knew it wasn't something I could just move past. This was a wound that would take a long time to heal. The day after the wedding, I woke up feeling a mix of relief and emptiness. On one hand, the whirlwind of planning, stressing, and smiling through the pain was over. On the other, the reality of what my parents had done was starting to sink in. It wasn't just that they missed my wedding. It was the clear message their absence sent. I wasn't their priority. I never had been. I tried to go about the morning normally. Ben made me breakfast, and we sat at the table pretending everything was fine, but I could feel the unspoken question between us. What now? Ben, as always, was patient and kind, letting me process at my own pace. He didn't push me to talk, but when I finally started venting, he listened like every word mattered. "I just don't get it," I said, pushing my food around my plate. "How could they think this was okay? It's not just about the wedding. It's the fact that they didn't even care enough to try. They didn't even call Ben. Not once." He nodded. "It's not about you, though. This is on them. They've shown you who they are, and as much as it sucks, you can't change them." Although he was right, part of me wanted to give them the benefit of the doubt, to believe that maybe they'd had some kind of epiphany and would call me, apologizing and begging to make things right. But as the hours ticked by, my phone stayed silent. By mid-afternoon, I decided to confront the situation head-on. I drove to my parents' house, feeling equal parts nervous and angry. When I got there, I found them sitting in the living room, laughing over something on my dad's phone. My mom looked up when I walked in, her smile fading slightly. "Hey, sweetie," she said casually, as if nothing had happened. "How was the wedding?" I couldn't stand her ridiculous question. I stood there for a moment, stunned by how nonchalant she sounded. "Are you serious?" I asked, my voice sharper than I intended. "You weren't there. You didn't even call. And now you're asking how it was?" My dad shifted uncomfortably, but my mom just sighed. "We didn't mean to hurt you," she said, her tone defensive. "Lauren really needed us. You know how much she puts into her parties, and we couldn't just leave her hanging." "Leave her hanging?" My voice rose. "It's a birthday party. She has one every year. This was my wedding. Do you even understand how humiliating it was to stand there, looking out at the crowd and see your seats empty?" My dad finally spoke up, his tone calm but patronizing. "We thought you'd understand. You're always so strong." And Lauren was really stressed. It wasn't about choosing one over the other. It absolutely was about choosing one over the other, I shot back. "And you didn't choose me. You've never chosen me. This wasn't just some small mistake. You missed one of the most important days of my life, and you didn't even try to make it right." They both went quiet for a moment, and I could see my mom searching for the right thing to say. Finally, she muttered, "We're sorry if you feel that way, but what's done is done. Can't we just move on?" "How am I supposed to move on when you don't even acknowledge how much you've hurt me? You didn't just miss my wedding. You made it clear that I don't matter to you. Not compared to Lauren." The room was heavy with silence after that. My parents looked at each other, then back at me, but neither of them said anything. I could feel the tears welling up, but I refused to let them fall. I wasn't going to cry in front of them. I can't do this right now," I said. "I need some time." Without waiting for a response, I turned and walked out. As I drove home, I felt a mix of anger, sadness, and a strange sense of clarity. I had always known my parents favored Lauren, but this was the first time I truly realized how deep it went. Their indifference, their excuses, their refusal to take responsibility, it was just a lot. I didn't have to keep pretending everything was okay anymore. When I got home, Ben was waiting for me. He didn't ask how it went. He could tell just by looking at me. Instead, he pulled me into a hug, and for the first time that day, I let myself cry. "I don't know if I can forgive them," I whispered. "You don't have to," he said simply. "At least not right now. Take your time. Focus on yourself. You don't owe them anything." That night, I sat down and started writing a letter. Not to send, but just to get my feelings out. I poured everything onto the page. The years of feeling second best, the countless times they prioritized Lauren over me, and the heartbreak of their absence on my wedding day. It wasn't pretty or polished, but it was honest. And for the first time in days, I felt a small sense of relief. I didn't know what would happen next. I didn't know if my parents would ever truly understand what they'd done, or if they even cared enough to try. But in that moment, I realized that I couldn't keep carrying the weight of their choices. This was their failure, not mine. And if they didn't want to be part of my life, then maybe it was time for me to stop trying to make them. In the days that followed my confrontation with my parents, their absence at my wedding began to spread. At first, I thought I could keep it quiet, just something I deal with privately. But word travels fast in my family, especially when it's something like this. By the end of the week, almost everyone in my extended family seemed to know what happened, and the reactions were intense. It started with my aunt, my dad's sister. She's always been outspoken and doesn't shy away from calling people out when she thinks they've done something wrong. She called me one evening, and after a few pleasantries, she went straight to the point. I heard your parents skipped your wedding for Lauren's birthday party. Please tell me that's not true. Hearing someone else say it out loud made me feel raw all over again. It's true, I admitted quietly. They said Lauren needed them, and they thought I'd understand. My aunt let out a long sigh. That's disgusting, she said bluntly. I'm so sorry, sweetie. You deserved better than that. She didn't stop there. By the next day, she'd shared her feelings in the family group chat, a place usually reserved for sharing baby photos and planning holiday gatherings. She wrote something like, I can't believe Adam and Lauren's birthday party was more important than my name's wedding. This family needs to get its priorities straight. It didn't take long for the chat to explode. My cousins chimed in, some shocked, others angry on my behalf. My grandparents, who hadn't been able to travel to the wedding due to health reasons, were particularly upset. My grandmother called me in tears, apologizing for not being there to support me. If I could have made it, I would have been there front and center, she said. I don't know what your parents were thinking. It breaks my heart. Her words brought me to tears, but they also made me realize how much support I did have from other parts of my family. For so long, I'd focused on the people who didn't show up for me, mainly my parents, that I hadn't fully appreciated the people who did. My grandparents, my aunt, my cousins. They all cared deeply about what had happened and wanted to make sure I knew I wasn't alone. Of course, not everyone was supportive. My mom, who apparently wasn't thrilled about being called out in the group chat, texted me with a long message about how I'd blown things out of proportion and how it wasn't fair to drag the family into this. She wrote, "We've apologized, and we don't deserve to be vilified for making one mistake." I stared at the message for a long time before responding. Finally, I wrote, I didn't drag anyone into this. People are upset because they see how hurt I am. That's on you, not me. She didn't reply. And then there was Lauren. She texted me too, her message dripping with fake innocence. I'm so sorry if my party caused any issues with your wedding. I didn't realize there was a conflict. I hope we can move past this and keep the family close. Reading her message made my blood boil. Lauren always knows everything that's going on in the family. She thrives on being in the center of things, so there's no way she didn't know my wedding date. Like Common, not to that extent Karen. Even if she didn't outright tell my parents to prioritize her party, she created an environment where they felt like they had to. I didn't respond. I couldn't muster the energy to pretend everything was fine with her anymore. Meanwhile, my brother Adam stayed noticeably silent through all of this. He hadn't said a word about the situation, and I wasn't sure if it was because he was embarrassed, conflicted, or just didn't want to get involved. Part of me wanted to reach out to him, to ask if he even realized how much damage Lauren's constant attention-seeking had caused. But I held back. If he cared, he'd say something. The whole situation was exhausting. Every time I thought I was done feeling hurt, another message or phone call would bring it all back. My wedding day was supposed to be about celebrating love and starting a new chapter in my life, but instead, it had become a battleground for family drama. And the worst part was, I didn't even start it. Amid all the chaos, Ben was my rock. He reminded me to focus on the positives, the friends who came to the wedding, the family members who were standing by me, and most importantly, our future together. He even suggested we throw a little post-wedding gathering with the people who had shown up for us. Something lighthearted and fun to shift the focus away from all the negativity. At first, I wasn't sure. The idea of celebrating felt strange when I was still so hurt, but I thought about it and realized he was right. My wedding wasn't ruined. Yes, my parents' absence cast a shadow, but it didn't erase all the love and joy that came from the people who did show up. I needed to stop letting their actions define my experience. So, a week later, we hosted a small backyard party with some of our closest friends and family. My grandparents, despite their health struggles, insisted on coming, and they brought a lovely gift, a framed photo of Ben and me from the wedding, with a note that said, "For the granddaughter we're endlessly proud of." My aunt showed up with a homemade cake, and my cousins joked about how this was the real celebration. It wasn't a grand affair, but it was exactly what I needed. For the first time since the wedding, I felt surrounded by love and support, and it reminded me that while my parents' absence hurt, it didn't define me. I still had so many people in my life who cared about me and wanted to celebrate my happiness. By the end of the evening, as Ben and I sat on the porch watching the sunset, I felt a sense of peace I hadn't felt in weeks. "We're building our own family now," he said, taking my hand. "One that values you the way you deserve to be valued." He was right. For so long, I'd been chasing my parents' approval, trying to prove my worth to people who never truly saw it. But that wasn't my burden to carry anymore. It was time to start focusing on the people who did see me and who celebrated me for who I was. And slowly, I realized I didn't need my parents to complete that picture. And I honestly wasn't expecting what would be their reaction after they heard about the backyard celebration. In the weeks that followed, I found myself constantly thinking about my parents' excuses and how they'd ignored everything. At the same time, I noticed something strange. My parents weren't reaching out. After our confrontation and the fallout in the family group chat, they seemed to go quiet. No texts, no calls, not even a passive-aggressive message from my mom, which was unusual. For a while, I kept checking my phone, expecting them to make some kind of effort to patch things up, but the silence continued. Initially, the lack of contact felt like a slap in the face, another way they were showing me how little I mattered. But over time, I started to see it differently. Their silence wasn't about me, it was about them avoiding accountability. They didn't want to face the consequences of their actions or have to deal with the backlash from the rest of the family. And honestly, that wasn't my problem anymore. One of the most surprising moments came when my brother Adam finally broke his silence. He called me out of the blue one evening. I picked up hesitantly. "Hey," he said awkwardly when I picked up. "I know it's been a while, but I wanted to check in. How are you doing?" His tone was hesitant, almost unsure, which wasn't like him. Adam had always been the confident, take-charge sibling, the one who seemed unaffected by family drama. "I'm fine," I replied. "Why?" There was a long pause on the other end of the line before he finally said, "Look, I've been thinking a lot about what happened with Mom and Dad. I know I didn't say anything at the time, but I want you to know that I'm sorry. I should have done more to stand up for you." His words caught me off guard. For years, I'd resented Adam for his silence, for the way he let Lauren dominate the family dynamic without ever stepping in. Hearing him acknowledge it, even a little, felt like validation I hadn't expected. "I appreciate that," I said carefully. "But it's not just about you standing up for me. It's about the fact that this has been going on for years, and no one's ever done anything to change it." "I know," he admitted, "and I'm not trying to make excuses. I guess I just didn't realize how bad it had gotten until the wedding. Seeing you go through that, it wasn't right. I've been talking to Lauren about it too, trying to set some boundaries." Hearing him mention Lauren made me nervous, but I forced myself to stay calm. "And how's that going?" I asked, unable to hide the skepticism in my voice. "It's a work in progress," he said with a small laugh. "But I wanted to let you know that I see it now. I see how much this has hurt you, and I'm going to try to do better." His words felt genuine, and while I wasn't ready to fully forgive him or trust that things would change overnight, it was a start. In the meantime, I continued focusing on myself. I started to shift my perspective. I stopped waiting for my parents to reach out. I poured my energy into the relationships that brought me joy and fulfillment. However, to be honest, I still had some hope. The turning point came one evening when I was sitting in the living room with Ben. We had just finished dinner, and I was scrolling through my phone when a text from my mom popped up. It read, "We miss you, sweetie. Can we talk?" I stared at it for a long moment, my stomach twisting. It was the first time she had reached out directly since our confrontation. Part of me wanted to reply immediately, to grab onto the tiniest thread of hope that maybe, just maybe, this time would be different. But another part of me knew better. I'd seen this pattern before. She'd reach out, we'd talk, and somehow it would all circle back to how I needed to move on and let it go. "Are you going to reply?" Ben asked. "Not yet. I need to figure out what to say." For the next couple of days, I mulled it over. I thought about everything that had led to this point. The years of feeling overshadowed, the countless times I'd tried to prove myself, and of course the way they had dismissed my wedding, like it was an afterthought. I realized that responding without clear boundaries would just set me up for more disappointment. So, when I finally replied, I kept it short and to the point. "I'm open to talking, but only if you're willing to listen and acknowledge how much this has hurt me. I'm not interested in excuses or being told to move on. Let me know if you're ready for an honest conversation. I didn't expect much, and I wasn't surprised when the response came hours later. We're sorry you feel this way, but we've already apologized. We don't know what else you want from us. These words were the same dismissive tone they'd used before, and it confirmed what I already suspected. They weren't willing to meet me halfway. They weren't ready to take responsibility for their actions or to see things from my perspective. I didn't reply. Instead, I sat down and made a decision I'd been avoiding for weeks. I needed to cut ties. It wasn't about punishing them or being dramatic. It was about protecting myself from the constant cycle of disappointment and hurt. I realized that I couldn't keep pouring energy into a relationship that was so one-sided. If they weren't willing to put in the work, then I needed to stop trying to fix something they weren't interested in fixing. That night, I told Ben what I had decided. I think I need to take a step back from them, I said quietly. Not forever, but for now. I can't keep doing this to myself. He nodded, his expression thoughtful. I think that's the right call, he said. You deserve peace, and if they can't give you that, then it's okay to step away. Over the next few weeks, I started to distance myself. I didn't block their numbers or anything drastic. I wasn't trying to burn bridges, but I stopped responding to their messages and ignored their calls. I needed space to breathe, to focus on the parts of my life that brought me joy, instead of constantly worrying about what they thought or expected of me. At first, it was hard. I'd spent so much of my life trying to maintain that connection, even when it hurt, that letting go felt unnatural. But as time went on, I began to feel lighter. I started to realize how much of my energy had been tied up in trying to make them see me, to value me, and how freeing it was to let go of that burden. The family group chat, predictably, didn't stay quiet for long. My mom eventually started posting vague messages about misunderstandings and family being more important than grudges. My aunt, bless her, wasn't having any of it. She called them out again, writing, "Misunderstandings don't happen when you skip your daughter's wedding. That's a choice, not a mistake." I stayed out of it. I didn't want to engage in the drama anymore. I was done explaining myself, done trying to make them see the impact of their actions. If they couldn't figure it out on their own, no amount of arguing was going to change that. As for Lauren, I decided to stop engaging with her altogether. She sent me a message, some overly cheery text about wanting to put everything behind us, but I left it unanswered. I didn't have the energy to deal with her fake innocence anymore. She wasn't my problem, and I wasn't going to make her one. Cutting ties with my parents wasn't easy. There were moments when I second-guessed myself, wondering if I was being too harsh or if I'd regret it later. But every time those thoughts crept in, I reminded myself of one simple truth. I deserved better. Maybe one day my parents will understand what they've done and take real steps to make amends. But until then, I'm done waiting. I'm moving forward, and for the first time, it feels like I'm finally free.